Greetings, Imagination Connoisseurs. Welcome to Robservations episode number 267. I am, of course, your host, Robert Meyer Burnett. Robservations is the show about something. And you know, the Seattle Seahawks are playing right now against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're second in the NFC West, and they're down by a touchdown. It's currently 14-7 Tampa Bay. Not that you needed to know that, but I just thought it important to mention because, as you all know, the Seattle Seahawks are the Jedi Knights of the Pacific Northwest. And remember, these chats are brought to you by Lucky Tiger Men's grooming products for those men who want to look good and feel great. And if you go to their website at getluckytiger.com and you punch in PGS for our community, the Post-Geek Singularity community, you get 20% off of your order. Well, Imagination Connoisseurs, it's Sunday afternoon. I hope you're all having it's Sunday afternoon where I'm sitting in the Pacific time zone. Of course, we fell back last night, so it's only 2 o'clock in the afternoon as opposed to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which is very exciting. Last night, Elizabeth and I attended the first Saturday night of the Neotropolis bar, and I'll tell you, what was really fun about getting ready, we kind of dressed up. I mean, Elizabeth made a very fine denizen of 2019 Los Angeles. Let me tell you, her hair looked great. She was definitely on point. She was a punk goddess last night. And to be honest, I didn't know if she was a real human being or a replicant. I think that's kind of how she wanted it. And what was really cool was with my new facial hair that I've been growing, I was able to try Lucky Tiger mustache wax. When Lucky Tiger became a sponsor of this show, they sent me a bunch of stuff, and I've had no call or no reason to use any of it. So I was very, very happy to give my my facial hair a little styling with Lucky Tiger mustache wax, and it worked quite well. I mean, it was no handlebar mustache, obviously, but I was able to give it a little shape. So that was kind of neat. I got to use a Lucky Tiger product I'd never used before. See, I'm not somebody that just, takes someone's money or takes someone's sponsorship without being real about it. I'm in. I'm going to be using Lucky Tiger products. And as I journey through their product line, I will constantly tell you what I think. What did I think of the Neotropolis bar? For those of you who don't know, of course, the movie Blade Runner takes place in November of 2019. That's when the movie opened. I saw it, of course, 37 years ago. I was there on June 25th. I saw the very first show in 70 millimeter at Seattle Cinerama Theater at noon. And it's now 37 years later. So these some friends of mine and people I didn't know had the idea of starting up, or just for fun, a Blade Runner themed pop-up bar. Or it's not really Blade Runner. It can't be Blade Runner themed because they don't want to violate anyone's copyright, Alcon's copyright. So it's really the Neotropolis bar, and it's pretty much it's inspired by many different kinds, everything from the works of Neil Stephenson and William Gibson. It could be a snow crash bar. It could be a Mona Lisa overdrive bar if you're so inclined and you get lucky. But it was pretty cool. I mean, they made it look like a bar from our favorite cyberpunk films and television and books. And it was really cool. There was a lot of great detail. They had a lot of great cocktails that they'd come up with. I'll tell you, they had this old fashioned, they'd smoke out this old fashioned, and they had this little smoking device. Like literally it would smoke your drink. Like when you get a smoked old fashioned, it was very tasty. I quite enjoyed it. They have food items that you can buy and things like that. And there's a lot of really great details. There's an underground level to it where I actually found a flyer for rollerball on the wall. So they've really put a lot of time and effort into this. It was a lot of fun. If I had any criticism, it would be nice if they had a full bar, like a full bar for everybody who might not want one of those cocktails. But it was fun. It was fun to hang out in. If you're going to dress up and play the part, it could be a lot of fun. I actually asked our hostess if she was artificial or not, and it was that kind of thing. It was fun. It was really fun. There's, of course, the Scum and Villainy Cantina that was a pop-up cantina that was obviously Star Wars themed that is now a permanent fixture on Hollywood Boulevard. It was kind of like that, and it was in downtown LA, and it was a lot of fun, and I did post pictures on Instagram, and Marianne Butler, our friend, she was completely decked out in she was dressed like a robot, more from AI, Spielberg's AI. I did not recognize her. She came up to me, and it wasn't until she talked to me, and even then I was a little, because her mouth was kind of restricted, but she looked great. And the guy who put the whole thing on, he kind of looked like Taffy Lewis in a way. It was neat. I mean, it was a lot of fun, and I recommend it. Go with a big gaggle of friends, hang out and enjoy yourselves. It's pretty neat. And they had really interesting things, like they had the office. I guess obviously it wasn't as big as Eldon Terrell's office that you see in Blade Runner, but they had actually have a digital display, so you're looking out a window where the sun is setting, and it was cool. It was really it was fun. It makes you really want to live in your favorite movie. And I frequently think about that. If we could just live in the world that has been depicted in so many of our films, whether it's dystopian or not. No, but it was very, very cool. So I quite enjoyed that. A little bit of business. When I was signing off yesterday, I missed a super chat. Jer Mananen sent in a super chat that said, "Have you seen RyanJohnson.com on The Last Jedi Blue?" It was good. I have, actually. I quite enjoyed that. I do, in fact, have The Last Jedi 4K disc, and I've enjoyed the special features on it. I need to go back and watch it. As I gear up for our 7 weeks of Star Wars, I'm looking forward to revisiting again. I'm going to watch Force Awakens and Last Jedi and get into that mindset. Now, as many of you know, I like to zip around and I watch lots of different YouTube clips. I read lots of different genre or entertainment related articles. And right before I went on today, I was looking for a subject. I look, to be honest, I don't think anyone needs another YouTuber talking about how Terminator Dark Fate didn't do well at the box office. I could have made that the topic of this conversation, but really, so what? It didn't do well at the box office. I find that unfortunate. Whenever a science fiction, fantasy, or horror film underperforms, it makes it harder for the next science fiction, fantasy, or horror film to get greenlit. Everybody's always second guessing that maybe science fiction is going out of style or something like that. I mean, we got His Dark Materials dropping. We've still got Watchmen on the air. There's lots of interesting stuff. But I was rooting for Terminator Dark Fate. I have not seen it. I think the wind came out of my sails about seeing it, but I will see it. I've enjoyed, to be honest, while I don't think any of the Terminator franchise films have sucked. I mean, they haven't sucked. I hate it when people say, "Oh, that movie sucked." What does that mean? One sentence? You have people working on something for 2 years and it sucked. No, you sucked. Anybody who says, "Oh, it sucked," fuck you guys. I mean, have a cogent point of view. People worked a long. If you don't like a movie, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But organize your thoughts. Have a reason why you didn't like it. What, it didn't make rainbows shoot out of your ass, so you thought it sucked? I want to know why. Give me an explanation. How come it didn't work for you? I want to know. And that's what I'm curious about. But anyway, so I was traveling around YouTube, skipping around the internet, and I found a really interesting article from a site called Escapist Magazine that I was not familiar with. I'm sure I've read articles off Escapist Magazine before, but this one caught my eye. And there was a picture from The Mandalorian showing his pointing. We've seen the picture. It's a still pointing his Boba Fett Star Trek Holiday Special weapon. It's a great still of The Mandalorian when he's fighting those people that we've seen him fight in the Rocky area in the trailer. But this article was dropped 4 hours ago, and it's by Darren Mooney. And the title of this article is "Disney Has Weaponized Spoiler Culture into a Marketing Strategy." Well, that immediately caught my eye. I've never been a big fan of spoilers, and I've never understood why. Well, I have understood. One of the things that geek culture, and I've known about this, since I was a wee lad. Geeks love to have more information than other geeks. We all want to possess knowledge that the other guy or girl doesn't have. I don't know why that is. I mean, maybe it's a function of feeling superior, but it's always like, "Oh, I know what's going to happen," and you've seen so much of genre online culture is all about spoilers. I mean, sometimes I think that Reddit was just designed to share movie spoilers and made, and that's why it exists. But I've always thought that the idea of spoilers is kind of dumb because a movie is a movie. A movie is it's written, it's directed. It's not like the people that work on the movie know what's happening because they're making the movie. So the idea of spoilers to me is sort of silly. Why would anybody want to know anything about a movie before you see it? Like, why would you want to know? It takes away the joy of seeing the film. You know, there are times when I read books, like I read Gone Girl, Gillian Flynn's Gone Girl, when it first came out. I think Stephen King wrote a review of it and said it was good. And I read a lot of fiction, modern fiction. And so I read Gone Girl and I was like, wow, you know, I really liked Gone Girl. There's a lot of twists. If you haven't seen Fincher's version, faithful adaptation, really good adaptation. I really liked Fincher's Gone Girl. And when the movie was coming out, it made me wish I didn't read the book because I didn't want to know what happened. You know, there's nothing like going into a movie and not knowing what's going to happen. And I found myself lately, it started really with Infinity War. I started leaving spoilers behind. I used to love spoilers. I was Mr. Spoiler. I didn't care. Tell me everything. And maybe that was because I read the novelization for The Empire Strikes Back before I saw the movie. And that was like the ultimate spoiler. I was bummed out because I didn't know that was coming. And when I read the book, I'm like, God damn it. Why did I have to know this before I saw it in the film? Bummed me out, people. Bummed me out. Well, anyway, so I found this. I just think spoilers are weird because, you know, knowing what's going to happen in a movie before you see it, to me, is counterproductive. It ultimately, people are like, oh, it doesn't matter. No, it does matter. Even if it doesn't matter to you, I'm telling you, it diminishes the experience of seeing a movie cold a little bit. And I really wish I lived in a world where, one, I didn't care, because I do care. I like knowing just as much as the next person. Oh, please tell me what's going to happen. But then once you learn, you're like, oh man, I wish I didn't know that. So I think spoilers are pretty stupid, but I get it. I understand. We all want to know, especially with our favorite franchises, because we can't bear to not know. It's terrifying. I mean, it's also maddening. You want to know. You want to know what's going to happen. Anyway, so this article, Disney has weaponized spoiler culture into a marketing strategy, by Darren Mooney, dropped 4 hours ago on Escapist magazine. I'm going to read it. Last week, the New York Times revealed that The Mandalorian will feature a dramatic Star Wars universe spoiler in the first episode. This announcement was noteworthy for a couple of reasons. Most immediately, it demonstrates how profoundly spoilers have influenced the way in which we talk about mass media. After all, up until now, when works of art have delivered major information about themselves or related media, they've usually been called plot points, not spoilers. This isn't quite up there with how do you feel about something. How you feel about something is just as much a spoiler as saying who dies, or the argument that retweeting an official Twitter account counts as a spoiler, but it's close. There are legitimate reasons for audiences to be concerned about spoilers, particularly in the era of social media and increased content fragmentation. Everybody is both extremely online and extremely vocal, and they tend to react immediately to any media they consume, making it hard for other people to avoid key plot points long enough to consume the media in question. Media companies have become increasingly aware of this concern, although most have responded in a clumsy way. Netflix will occasionally offer screeners with a laundry list of plot points that they explicitly do not want reviewers to mention. Blade Runner 2049's director famously instructed critics to review his film without mentioning almost any details, which made it a tough sell to audiences. One company has emerged very much ahead of the pack in terms of understanding the marketing potential of spoiler phobia. Over the past couple of years, Disney has shrewdly and smartly weaponized spoiler culture as a way of selling their product immediately and directly to fans. The company has been incredibly canny. Spoiler phobia handily disarms a lot of potential criticism by taking any plot points off the table. It might be reasonable to criticize Captain Marvel for its decision to focus on a character who has no history or backstory until roughly 40 minutes into the film, reducing the plot to a series of things that happen with minimal emotional involvement, but that would count as a spoiler. These criticisms inevitably arise, but spoiler culture postpones them until after the crucial opening weekend. This is just the beginning. Disney first leaned into spoiler anxiety with the release of Avengers Infinity War, launching the hashtag Thanos Demands Your Silence. This suggested that it would be a crime to spoil anything about the film, especially any details of the ending, which is amusing in hindsight given how closely that ending hews to Jim Starlin and George Perez's The Infinity Gauntlet. The third and fourth Avengers films had long been developed and pitched as a two-part franchise capper. This was very much a Hollywood trend. Harry Potter, Twilight, and The Hunger Games all split their final installments in half in an effort to double their profits. Even the art house got in on the act, with Lars von Trier splitting Nymphomaniac in two. However, that fad quickly fizzled out. The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2 underperformed in November 2015. Then Allegiant Part 1 crashed and burned at the box office in March 2016. In May of 2016, Disney officially retitled the films that had been known as Infinity War Part 1 and Infinity War Part 2. It was a very calculated business decision. The two films remain extremely interwoven. As such, insisting that critics not reference the cliffhanger ending to Infinity War played like a clever business move, one designed to avoid potential audience apathy. It became a spoiler to mention something that Disney itself had confirmed almost 4 years before anybody saw a single frame of footage. It was a savvy move. Thus, Disney doubled down on it with Endgame. Not only did the Disney company resurrect the idea that Thanos demands your silence, but it also launched hashtag Don't Spoil the Endgame. The company ensured that Tom Holland's inability to keep a secret became an adorable meme that spread like wildfire across social media. Again, Disney understood how spoiler phobia could be harnessed for financial gain. This time, the Russo brothers suggested a spoiler ban that would conveniently lift on the film's second Monday in release. This created a need for potential audience members to see the film as quickly as possible. This may have helped Endgame to secure the second largest second weekend ever at the box office. After all, the fear of spoilers creates urgency and demand. Ignoring the uncomfortable precedent set by a major corporation effectively determining what can and cannot be said about its product and when, the spoiler ban created an urgency in mobilizing fans who were wary of having this film spoiled for them. It was an extraordinarily cynical and calculated move with a clear profit motive. The same is true of the spoiler apparently nestled inside the first episode of The Mandalorian. Like a ticking social media time bomb. It's telling that this revelation came in an article about the marketing for Disney Plus, mentioning the spoiler in the same sentence as billboards, 30-second television commercials, radio spots, and digital ads. After all, that first episode of The Mandalorian will be available from the moment that Disney Plus starts streaming. At that point, the spoiler will be out in the open. By announcing all of this ahead of time, Disney is feeding that anxiety and deploying it as a sales gimmick. The only way to avoid the spoiler is to subscribe to Disney Plus immediately. That is a hell of a hook, particularly for a company muscling into a streaming market still dominated by Netflix. This year has seen the emergence of a number of credible challengers entering the marketplace, and each has adopted its own approach to breaking in. Apple TV offers a ridiculously low price point and a free subscription with Apple products to get people to sign on. Disney has its own approach, including an incredibly vast back catalog that includes brands like Marvel Studios, Star Wars, Pixar, and National Geographic. Its service will offer everything from a new live-action version of Lady and the Tramp through to classic oddities like Sammy, the Way Out Seal. It is concerning that spoiler culture has become such a crucial plank in that marketing strategy. Well, I found this article to be pretty interesting. It's funny, I never really thought of it that way. I have bought in as a fan, bought into the idea, don't spoil the end game. I'm like, how cool is that? But then when it's put in terms that the article of this piece, Darren Mooney said, I'm like, oh, they've taken our desire, because by the way, we as geeks, we're easy to play. I mean, the old adage or the old term, play him like a fiddle, or he played me or she played me like a fiddle. Nobody can be played easier than we fanboys and fangirls or non-gender specific fan people. There are easy ways to just get us all in a lather, to make us frothy at the mouth like we're rabid or something. And it's easy to do, and it's easy to see. And in a way, I feel the same way about what Disney's doing with spoilers as I do with Russian interference in our elections and our society. Good on them for figuring out a way to do it. We certainly haven't. We're not defending against it. So I'm not going to get mad if Disney, as the company that it is playing on my heartstrings and my fan anxiety about getting a movie like Infinity War or Endgame spoiled for me, or now the upcoming Mandalorian enticing me with the idea that, look, saying that there's a spoiler in the first episode of The Mandalorian isn't going to get me to necessarily watch The Mandalorian. I'm going to watch The Mandalorian anyway. They've got me hook, line, and sinker. I mean, reel me in. Whatever you need to do. The Mandalorian is going to have its way with me because it's Star Wars and I'm excited. And we get 2 episodes. We get one on the 12th and one on the 15th. So you're getting 2 hours of live action Star Wars in a week that you've never seen before, with characters you've never met before, with actors playing them that you've never seen inhabit the Star Wars universe before. I mean, I'm deliriously excited about The Mandalorian. So a spoiler is not going to make me any more excited. But I mean, it's amazing to see, like, everybody thinks it is common knowledge, if you want to look online, that everybody thinks they know the Rise of Skywalker's ending. Well, as this article points out, Disney is very canny about leaks, about all kinds of things. And J.J. Abrams loves his mystery box. I think we're all being played, frankly. Maybe we're right. Maybe the internet is right. Maybe the leaks we're going to all see the movie and it's like, that's just like what I read on Reddit. But I think that Disney's a little bit more savvy than that. I think we've all been played. At least I'd like to think so, because I'd like to believe that the people at the top are smart. I mean, I know everyone's going to say, oh, Rob, you naive little waif. It's true. But I'm the guy that wanted to believe Bat Boy was real in the Weekly World News. And it bummed me out that Bat Boy probably isn't real. I do want to believe that the telescope they shut down really did find a mega structure surrounding a planet. I want to believe these things because the universe would be more interesting if they were all true. Who doesn't want Bat Boy to be real? So perhaps the spoilers that have been released or dropped about the end of Rise of Skywalker are true. But the question remains, why would you want to know that before you saw the movie? I mean, really? Why would you want to know before you saw? Wouldn't you rather have it revealed to you? And not only that, but these spoilers then, look, I talk about the channels that I watch, and I do watch Doomcock and Nerdrotic and Midnight's Edge. I like appearing on Midnight's Edge. I like those guys, but I watch their channels. And then they jump on board and they're doing all these videos about the supposed endings of these movies. And it's like, well, like, why won't we can't even, why do we have to judge these things? Why do we have to judge these things before we've seen them? Now, when something comes out and you've seen it, like all of the op-eds about Terminator Dark Fate, I'm like, bring them on. I'm whether you loved it or not, whether you see it as an SJW movie or a worthy successor to Terminator 2, I like reading everybody's opinions once the movie is out there. But I don't understand why fan culture loves their spoilers so much, because at the end of the day, so you get to know more. To me, the movie's already been made. The script was written. The spoilers were there to be found if you knew anybody who worked on the film years ago. Like, they're there. It's not like you've discovered the Ark of the Covenant. It's not like you found some unique piece of information that only you possess. Thousands of people worked on the rise of Skywalker. And, they chose not to reveal the information because where's the fun in that? And I've always found it sort of silly that we want to diminish our own experience of movies by learning spoilers before we see them. And look, I'm as guilty of it as the next guy or girl or gentle being or non-binary person or whoever is, whichever one of you, however you identify, you're looking for spoilers. The question is why? And anybody that says, well, I've got this spoiler information. Well, it's not. Look, they made the movie. The movie's what it was written to be a certain way. It was acted to be a certain way. It was shot to be a certain way. So what you're calling a spoiler is so you know something about how the movie went. I mean, the movie was written years ago. So the spoilers that you're talking about, it's not like you've uncovered some great new, the cure for cancer. What you've uncovered is a piece of information that it's more fun to not have, but you would rather have it and then disseminate it to others for whatever reason. I mean, we all know. It makes us feel good when we know something somebody wants to know. Like, I have a spoiler for blah, blah, blah. Oh my God, please, 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 please tell me. I know, because I'm the guy going, please, 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 please tell me because I want to know. And every time I know, I'm like, God damn it, I wish I didn't know that. And I do it to myself. And every time I do it to myself, I'm like, I wish I didn't know this. And I felt that way. The first time I ever felt that way was with Empire Strikes Back. I really wish I hadn't read the novelization before I saw the movie, but I couldn't help myself. I was full of myself. It was my bar mitzvah. I was becoming a man. So I'm like, I can read the Empire novelization. It came out. Why they really? And not only did I read the Empire novelization, I listened to the soundtrack at the same time because that came out first before the movie did too. So I'd heard the Imperial March before I'd seen the montage of Star Destroyers, and it bummed me out. I mean, I love the Imperial March. I probably played it 100,000 times before I saw the movie. I thought it was one of the coolest things ever, and it was just called the Imperial March. I'm like, oh my God, bad shit's going to go down, and it's going to be glorious. I can't wait. But you know what? If I could make one thing about geek culture go away forever, it wouldn't be the infighting. It wouldn't be, how the gatekeeping, whatever that is. It wouldn't be the online arguments. It would be spoilers. I really wish geek culture would protect. I mean, they did when the Russo brothers asked. One of the great experiences I've had actually in the last couple of years was I was unspoiled both for Infinity War and Endgame. I mean, I lost my shit. I was sitting next to John Schnepp, and when we heard the sound alike for the Red Skull, and we found out that he was there on was it Vormir, and he was guarding the Infinity Stone. I'm like, I lost my shit, and I didn't know what was happening. As a matter of fact, I didn't know anything that was happening in Infinity War or Endgame. I managed to go spoiler-free into both of those movies, which definitely added to my enjoyment because it was all new to me. I had no idea what was going on, but I had to make a concerted effort, and I was tempted, man. I was tempted. I wanted to know, but I refrained, and the experience, I was a better man for it at the end of the day. And I think spoiler, I would love to lead a spoiler-free life. Some people give up nicotine, some people give up hard drugs, some people give up opiates. I just wish I could give up the idea that I want to give up spoilers. I can't resist. It's like having an angel food cake in front of you. You can't really resist. Or if I have Haribo gummy bears or hot tamales, I can't resist. I wish I could. Louis Yu asks, how was the Neotropolis bar experience last night? Well, Louis, I I talked about that. I thought it was good. It was a lot of fun. Jackson Perez says, I'm going crazy waiting for The Mandalorian. Well, Jackson, me too. I can't wait. I'm very excited for The Mandalorian. I think it's going to be, I have very high hopes about The Mandalorian. And I like the fact that I don't know anything about it. Don't know anything about it. So I'm very excited for that. Because I really don't. I haven't read much. Maybe there are spoilers about The Mandalorian. I don't know them. I haven't seen them. You know, I did when that footage from Celebration dropped online and it was that extended footage. It was bootleg. I watched it. I did. And it was when The Mandalorian comes in and talks to Werner Herzog's character. I watched that shit and I ate it up. And I'm like, wow, but that didn't really tell you what was going on. You didn't even see The Mandalorian take his helmet off. So, I mean, if The Mandalorian turns out to be Boba Fett himself, maybe that's the spoiler. I don't know. That'd be cool. It wouldn't, you know, who knows? Anyway, I just wish I could lead a spoiler-free life. I wish. I don't know if I'm capable. I don't know if I don't know if I have the self-discipline. I certainly, if I know that there's cinnamon saltwater taffy from Bruce's Candy Kitchen anywhere in my vicinity, I can't not eat it. Can't not eat it. Just can't. Anyway, the first letter today comes from Mukbang Reviews. Hello, RMB, PGS live chat, and amazing mods. I'll be back sooner than you think. Captain Burnett, can you speak to the difference between rehearsal and practicing relevant to the movie making business? Perhaps it's how many takes you have to do to get it right, etc. I don't know. I love the story you tell, but haven't recently, about working with the great William Shatner when he said, "This is our time," as the lighting was adjusted. He taught you something at that moment. I revere teaching like that, contemporaneous and relevant. In my music background, I learned the importance of rehearsal and the intimacy of practice. I spent hours practicing my instruments. The hours became days and then months and then years. I noticed the parallels between my math studies, algebra mostly, but discarded it. Instead, I listened intently to my music teachers and after a few years became a leader in my band. Band nerd here. Hey, Brian Hepburn, laugh out loud. I earned many mostly meaningless trophies and awards, but never received one for participation. Later in college, I took a few theater classes and realized that what a band leader said many years prior remained true. There is a difference between rehearsal and practice. I only speak of that live music time in my life, which is now well past, to say this, paraphrasing, as I was taught in the musical and live theater realms. Practice on your own time. When we rehearse, it means you've already put in that time and worked out the kinks. We are not here for you to learn your notes, lines, or general stage position or lighting. We are here to refine the performance. I would digress and talk about the thrill, and yes, Willow, total stage fright of opening night on a live stage theater production, but I want to know your live stage experience versus filming. I only perform live stage theater and music, never movies, but I'm curious about how it works on a movie set. Do you rehearse a lot, or is that left to the actors' practice time? Mukbang Reviews. Well, what a great letter, first of all. I got to give it up to you, Mukbang, for this letter. It's a really interesting question. Now, here's the thing. I've mostly worked in low budget movie making. And on low budget movie making, you really don't have time to rehearse. So what happens is on a movie set, like when I was, say, working on Hills on Red or Free Enterprise or even directing Femme Fatales, you don't have, here's how it comes down. When you have to shoot, say, 6 or 8 or even 10 pages of a script in a day, the only time you're getting any semblance of rehearsal is what happens is, like, from a directing standpoint, here's what I would do. For Femme Fatales, we had no standing sets. So every episode we were shooting, I directed of the 2 seasons, I directed 5 episodes of Femme Fatales. I directed 2 in the first season and 3 in the second season. And a lot of the time we would go on, we'd go rehearse. I mean, we would go on a rehearse. We would go on a scout and we'd see where we were shooting. And in your mind, you're kind of looking at the script, which sometimes you didn't get until the day of, because it was TV. It was crazy. So what I would do is you literally have to figure out like on the day. And what I like to do as a director is it's what I call walking the day, where you take your DP, your director of photography, and you take, I know Veston's like going, no, you take your DP, your director of photography, and you take your first AD, who's the most important person on all sets, whether it's a television set or a movie set, your first AD, first assistant director, and your director of photography, and you walk what you're going to do. You walk the day's work, and you tell your DP what you're thinking about, and your first AD also. So the first AD will organize shots, the order of shots, like how can we do this, and the first AD will make adjustments and maybe help you out, and then the cinematographer knows and can also make adjustments to make the day go smoother, and how can we make this all easier. Once that is done and everybody has a battle plan and you're going to start your day, what you end up doing is you block a scene. So your actors have been practicing on their own. If they're working on their characters or they're running their own lines or they do it with friends or whatever, they have been practicing on their own time. We never get a chance to practice because you're moving too fast. So what happens is you bring your actors out and you block the scene. And what you do is they will run a scene and you look how that goes, and the director can then make adjustments on how the scene's going to work. You figure it out, and this doesn't take, you're burning time, so it's part of your day. So you want this to go as fast as possible, and it's always better if you've already that's why I walk the day. So my first AD and the DP already know what's in my mind. We can get out there, we can move the actors and make them do and go where we want them to go. And then we will run the scene quickly, but there's no practicing. You're basically rehearsing, or you're also blocking, in which case we figure, how are we going to shoot the scene? Where are we going to start? Where's our master going to be? We're going to punch in for close-ups. How is that all going to work? We figure that out. The actors will run the scene a couple of times. They should know their lines cold. We might want to make adjustments. I might have interesting things to say to them as a director when the way they're saying their lines, or make adjustments then they go away. The DP and his team, the gaffers, the assistant camera people, lighting, all that, they come in and they light up the set the way they need it to be lit so we can shoot it. And then we bring the actors on and we run the scene. And Femme Fatales, if you had to do more than 4 takes, you're killing yourself, because you're going to lose coverage in the back end. You might have 4 different masters, but you might not get the close-ups that you need. So it was rough. Now, if you're on a larger budget, see, the problem is actors on a movie get paid for their time. Now, if you're working on a low-budget horror film and you know everybody, and you want to practice or you want to do rehearsals and work with the actors before you get to the actual day, that's always great, where you can actually sit down and run exercises or just talk about the characters. Like, I can convey what I'm thinking about these characters to the actors, and then they can go home, and when they're practicing on their own time, they can incorporate my notes or what I've been thinking into their performance. Now, sometimes rehearsals are budgeted. You can get the actors together, and this really doesn't happen much anymore, but it used to, where you can actually get the actors into a room and you can rehearse, you can play with the scenes, talk about them, refine them. Sometimes the writer will even come and change the dialogue based on how the actors are delivering their dialogue. And I'm a big proponent of that. If I had more time to work rather than low budget stuff, I would love to get actors together and refine, because a lot of the time you'll have, and I've never done anything, we didn't have time to do this on Femme Fatales, but you have what's called a page turn, where all the department heads come around and you're sitting around a big table and you read through the script, and every department gets to ask questions. You figure out here's what everybody needs. And that page turn can take a whole day if you're doing a feature film script. But I would love to do that if I had time with the actors, where we go through and I can tell them I was thinking this and just give them notes so then they can go home and practice. So that's basically the difference. But we don't get much rehearsal time anymore, where all the actors, we get them into a room, we run the scenes, we talk about it. You don't get that anymore. You basically get to block a scene and then you shoot it. So you hope that your actors have practiced on their own time. Now, I don't know if that necessarily answers your question the way you wanted it, but that's kind of how movie making and television certainly are done. You just don't have time to really rehearse, and you hope that the actors that you've hired have practiced enough. One of the great joys when I was doing Free Enterprise is we had a lot of actors, and I was very lucky that I was working with some great actors that really knew their stuff. Everybody came ready to play, and it was terrific. And once you know your part cold, once you've practiced enough, then there's time to improv. There's time for actors to sprinkle things in that you might not have thought about, which is kind of delightful, and you can choose to use them or not. But there's a lot of happy accidents that happens. The more practice people have done, when they get to set, the better off everybody is. But that's when magic can occur. So, yeah. I hope that answers your question. But yeah. Let's see. And we've got I got another letter here. James Wallace, my buddy James, who came and visited us at the Pasadena Art Walk. This is a real quick one. Hey, Rob, real quick letter. I just got back from taking pictures of the witch's house in Beverly Hills. Pretty wild architecture. If you had the money to just go hog wild and create a house outside the norm, like the interior of Deckard's apartment, or if they would actually have built the Enterprise Hotel in Vegas, what would you make as a house if you could go wild with your imagination? Well, there's a house that I've always loved. It's here in LA. It's called the Chemisphere House. And if you've ever seen the movie Body Double, it was in that movie. And basically the Chemisphere House is this house that's on a big pylon. So it's like a mushroom. But the whole house is elevated. It's being held up by a pylon, and it's got glass all the way. It looks like a flying saucer that's on like a monopod. I love that house. It has incredible views. You can see it. It's off Mulholland Drive. It's still there. But they featured it in the movie Brian De Palma's Body Double from '84. You can see the Chemisphere House. But I would think that I'm more of a traditionalist. Another house I really love is Diabolic's Lair from Danger Diabolic, Mario Bava's Danger Diabolic, which is actually inside a cave, but it's this cool glass house. But, Tony Stark's digs in the Iron Man movies. But I like traditional, I like manners, big houses, old school houses. I would love to live in Hugo Drax's mansion in Moonraker, some French chateau that was brought brick by brick somewhere. I wouldn't want to live in like the Starship Enterprise unless it was actually in space and I was the captain. I like traditional buildings, old school buildings. I look at Elizabeth and I watch a lot of these. Like, here's an $8 million house in Bel Air, and they all kind of look the same. They're all these sleek, ultra modern things, but it's like they don't look homey to me. Yeah, they're cool looking, but the spaces are sort of strange. It's like people don't belong in them. Like when you're in them, they all feel while they're cool and modern, they're not really comfortable. They don't scream home to me. So I guess I'm more of a traditionalist. But yeah, I could go look, I would not mind living in the volcano base that Spectre had in You Only Live Twice. If I was going to live in anything like that, I'd want to go big. It'd be huge. Carl Stromberg's Undersea City in Spy Who Loved Me, I would live in that. I'd bring it on. But inside of it, it would look fairly traditional. I would have lot of nice woods and moldings, and I'd want to have more of a traditional way of looking at things. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it just is. This next letter comes from Kai Shane Bright. Dearest Rob, this is my first letter to you, and I come with a Halloween cautionary tale. Sorry, I'm not getting to this until early November, but here we go. Never say never. Back in 1997, I went to my local drive-in to see a little movie called Men in Black. It had aliens, Will Smith, and a Danny Elfman score, so of course I was going to see it. After a few minutes into the movie, a border patrol guy is dripping with purple slime alien innards, and soon after, more border patrolmen come running over a hill. There was one border patrolman that looked so goofy to me. That blonde one. That blonde guy without a hat. Boy, did his 50-foot face look silly. What a gullible breed, Tommy Lee Jones's Agent J says to the group before he erases their memory with the neuralizer. Yuck, I would never look twice at a guy like that, I remember thinking in my youthful mind. Anyhow, I went on to love the movie and buy it on VHS when it came out. I still thought that blonde guy looked goofy. Fast forward to 2019, and Men in Black is all over cable TV. My daughter and I are at a friend's house when my friend announces that Men in Black is on. I rush over to the TV and notice that the border patrolmen are running over the hill, and here comes Agent J and his neuralizer. Oh, and that goofy-looking blonde guy again. Hey, it's the scene. Want to come see it? I call out to my daughter. Mom, I'm tired of watching Dad on TV, she replies. And that's the moral of this story. Be careful who you laugh at or goof on, because they just might be hot in person, and it would just be your luck to meet them and start a family with them. Never say never. Nonetheless, Tommy was what I called a glorified bit player from 1992 until about 2004. He was in countless shows, music videos when that was a thing, and movies, including Demolition Man, Apollo 13, Speed, X-Files, Jag, and usually played cops. I still find it awful fun to talk to him about his Hollywood days, but after years of finding Dad in different movies, almost like playing Where's Waldo, our daughter is over it. Again, never say never. Kai SB. And you can go, there's a hyperlink on the website. That's very funny. I really enjoy that. I think that we did put the right person on the letter. You can find this on the website, so go check that out. I love that. Let's see. This new one comes from somebody I'm always mispronouncing his last name. Chris Pravoto. Good day to you, Rob, and to the wonderful listeners. I'm sure you've just returned today from your weekly bridge or cribbage event with Bob Iger. Squash. It's our weekly squash game. Hope the events turned out successful for both parties and overwhelmingly enjoyable. Yeah, after our squash game, we go to Jeffrey's in Malibu and have lobster. Since your return, 2 entertainment world questions have come to mind that I, and perhaps your loyal listeners, would enjoy simple but Robbie elegant explanations on. 1, creative differences. With all the hubbub recently from the world in the Mouse House articles of creative differences, what the F is this to non-Hollywood types? I'm sure the studios still have their own basic ideas, as the script writer had their own ideas and the crew have their own ideas. But what are examples of creative differences that could so profoundly affect someone whose life employment from film to film to survive and have an income that they'll decide to walk away? And what would that process be like? 2, investors. I've heard and watched videos explain that producers are the money gatekeepers from the studio. But where do investors come from? If a studio has dozens of years for making films with a list of producers in their Rolodex, what is the need for a studio to get an investor? Does this suppose to the studio's money? What happens when a film flops? So the investors and studios take the hit, or just the studio? By the way, RMB in the aviation Navy world for logistics. Oh, by the way, RMB in the aviation Navy world for logistics means repairable management branch. Just FYI. Also, no worries on the last name. We all live with however you choose to say it. Chris, I'm going to say it again. Chris Pavoto. I think it's Pavoto, right? Have I been saying with an R? This is a really good question. This is a very good question. You hear creative differences all the time, usually as an excuse. I'll give you an example from my own life that might help define what creative differences are, but it's more about how I didn't get a job. So when you make a movie, when Free Enterprise came out, I had about a year of time because it won awards at festivals. I went to a lot of meetings. I used to call them Evian meetings because for the most part, they never went anywhere. And you go to these meetings and you first thing, can I get you an Evian? That's what I heard a lot. Or can I get you something to drink? But it was, for whatever reason, it was, can I get you an Evian at the time? So you go to a lot of these meetings, and a lot of the time you're meeting with mid-level development people whose job it is to learn who new filmmakers are, so they get into the mix. Most of these people had never even seen my movie. They just heard that, oh, you made this funny comedy. But what you're hoping to do is come up for a role. You're hoping to get a job. You know, you want to get a job. I made one movie. So for a year, I went to these meetings where I was being offered certain things. One of the movies that I almost directed, it came down to me and one other guy, the guy who directed it, was Dude, Where's My Car? So I got all the way. I went into this meeting at 20th Century Fox. I was in a room with all the brass that were going to make this movie, and I had to pitch my idea for the film. Now, the original script for Dude, Where's My Car? I thought was hilarious. Now, I was not a stoner myself, but I liked stoner comedies, and the original script for Dude, Where's My Car? Was filled with drugs. And the two characters in the film, the two guys, they referred to their pot, their weed, as shibby. I don't know why, but 20 years later, I still remember that word. I thought that word was hilarious. I thought the script was really funny. And it was, to me, it was a fusion between a Cheech and Chong movie and Repo Man. And so I had a very clear vision of what I wanted to do with this film, how I would direct it. And that's what you have to do. When you go in and somebody's going to hire you, you've got to pitch your little, you've got to pitch your heart out. You have to show that you have a vision for this movie, that you've thought about it up, down, and sideways. And you have to tell those people that are going to hire you, the producers and the studio executives, you have to dazzle them in the room, and they have to be absolutely convinced that you're the guy. And I did. I pitched my little heart out, and I brought up Repo Man and Cheech and Chong movies. I thought in the early 2000s, the late 90s, early 2000s, I thought it was pretty subversive to actually make what I would consider to be a pro-drug film, because these characters were unapologetic about their drug use. And I thought that was cool. I could wrap my head around that. I thought coming off of Free Enterprise and going on to direct Dude, Where's My Car? would have been my stepping into the studio world. I thought it would have been really good for me. So, man, I did my research and I pitched my little heart out. Sometime between when I pitched and when they finally made a decision, they decided to basically take all of the drug elements out of the movie. They're like, it would immediately have got the movie R-rated, and they were, should we do that? Are we limiting our audience? Do we want that headache? So I was not asked to come pitch. They just decided. Now, this is how it was explained to me by my agent at the time. They decided to take the drugs out. And because I, in my pitch, had talked about how much I enjoyed the drug element in the script. And by the way, that it was in the script. It's what they gave me. It wasn't like I was going to go in there and say, well, I really think that you should take the drug element out. That was not my place. I could only comment on the script that I was given. So they took all the drugs out. They decided to change that. And basically the guys were just kind of dim. And I, I, I was never given an opportunity to pitch. But what would have happened is if they decided to do that, and I had been hired to direct the project, and then they told me that they were going to remove all the drugs, I would have said, I don't know how to make that movie, you know? And that would have been a perfect example of creative differences. Look, I would have rolled with it, to be honest, but I'm just trying to, for your question, if I was really set in my ways, I'm like, no, this movie has to be a drug film. They have to be stoners. I really want to, that's what's so subversive about it. And if the producers have decided, no, we have to make a movie that's more family friendly, we got to have a younger audience so more people can see it. And I would have been like, no, it has to be a drug film. That would have been a perfect example of creative differences on a project. And now what ends up happening is, there are a lot of people. It really depends. When you're a gun for hire, when you're a director and you're being brought in to direct a film, a feature film, you're at the mercy pretty much of the producers or the studio. You have to make the movie they want you to make. Now, you can have ideas, you can certainly have input, and all directors do. But when you're hired to direct a studio picture, it's not like you're going to come in. That's if you're being hired by the studio. If you're the auteur that a studio has greenlit your project that you've bought or brought to them, then they know what it is. They know what they're getting from you, and you're supposed to deliver that thing. But in my case, when I was brought in, I would not have that luxury. I would have to make the movie they wanted me to make. And that's what, if they had then said to me, we're taking the drugs out, we're going to make it PG-13 instead of R or PG, I might have had creative differences, and I would have had to ankle, in industry parlance, ankle the project or leave the project. So that would have been what a creative difference is. Now, usually, a lot of the time, people just can't work with each other, and they say, due to creative differences, people have left. They left the project. But a lot of the time, true creative differences are, you might have a director or a producer or a writer that sees not eye to eye, whoever has the power. I'm sure in the case of, say, Solo, Lord and Miller were doing what they were doing, which is they ad-lib a lot. They find a scene, they try and make it funnier. And I'm sure that did not fly with Lawrence Kasdan. And the reason that it got so far along is that some of it was probably working very well. But ultimately, Lawrence Kasdan probably said, this is not the script I wrote. This is not the kind of movie we're making. And that was truly Lord and Miller. I'll bet you they were fired for that reason. And it truly, they were creative differences. Now, they weren't exactly doing what they were supposed to do either. You really, when you're working for a studio or you're working for other people, it is imperative. If I was going to direct a Star Wars movie, if I was lucky enough to ever direct a Star Wars movie, the first thing that I would do is I would tell Kathleen Kennedy, look, I want to have a phone conversation with you every day after we wrap. Or first thing in the morning and talk to you about everything I'm doing, because what you want is the studio, when you're making a movie, is your partner. They're your partner. They're your creative partner, and they're certainly your business partner. And because they're finding the money and they're putting it up, you need to look at them as somebody that you are working for and with, mostly for. And you have to be very mindful of that. And I think that's a really important thing. Now, you ask about investors. Now, this is a much bigger topic, a bigger, broader topic. Basically, at the studio level, I'll explain it to you quickly. At the studio level, movies now are very, very expensive to make. And what your studios cannot, they don't have, they're not sitting on $1 billion of liquid cash. You can't make movies on credit as much as you might think you can. I mean, if you're making a $30,000 movie, but a motion picture studio is making $150 or $200 million film, they don't have $200 million of liquid cash rolling around. And when you turn on that payroll, you turn on the spigot, people are getting paid every week. So you need liquid cash. It's being drawn from somewhere. So what the studios are trying to do is mitigate their risks by involving other financial entities. Paramount has David Ellison's Skydance. David Ellison is Larry Ellison, founder of Oracle, Larry Ellison's son. So Skydance comes in and they make films at Paramount, and Skydance arranges for a lot of the financing. Well, even Skydance needs partners, so they might find Chinese financing. And what you're trying to do is you've got people mitigating the risk, depending on how that's going to work. So when the studio gets paid money, it's distributed to the people that have shared the risk in financing the films with them. That's basically what you have other investors coming in. And when the studio gets paid, it depends who. There's a thing called first money in. So whoever puts up the first money, they usually get their money out first. And that's the way it works. Now, on an independent movie, I can tell you on an independent movie like Tango Shalom, or Free Enterprise or any of the other independent projects I've been involved with, somebody wants to make a movie and you have to find investors. Now, it's very hard to find investors for low-budget indie projects because you don't have any guarantee that you can get that money back. You don't have any guarantee. If a studio is making a movie, they control their own distribution. So if 20th Century Fox, well, not anymore, but if Universal or Warner Brothers or Disney or a mini major like an A24 or something, they know they can release their own movies, so they control their distribution, so they know money's coming back. But for somebody like myself, I'm always looking for people to invest in films. Like I've said before, you cannot guarantee, you can make any kind of business proposal you want, but as an independent feature filmmaker, you cannot guarantee to anybody that they're going to get their money back. So the question remains, why would they possibly invest money into your project? Well, there's a lot of reasons. People might need something to do with their taxes. They might need to show a loss for the year. When you're making a movie, you might not see a return for 2 or 3 years before the movie's done and distributed. So you can carry that investment as a loss for a couple of years if that's what you want to do, that you invested however many tens of thousands or millions of dollars to an independent film project, and you're not going to see a return on it for a couple of years, legitimately so. So you can write off that loss and carry forward. If that's what you want to do. You can find investors who want to do that. You can find investors that want to invest in films. They just want to do that. The high risk doesn't matter to them. They want to see their movie in lights. They want to see their name in lights. They want to be able to tell their friends that they produced a film. There's those kinds of investors. Or in the case of Tango Shalom, there's a number of different investors, and based on their deals that they made, somebody has first money in, so they get first money out. And that's how investors work. And what you want to do is mitigate their risk. In the case of independent films, what I want to do is I like to be involved in projects that I know an investor is going to get paid back. And what you want is you want to try and give them whatever they put into the movie plus 30%. In an ideal world, you'd want to return 30% more on top of the initial investment that whatever investor made, because what you want to then do is be able to go back to that investor and borrow more money for your second movie. So it's really important that you take your investors seriously, and that their needs are first of all, like I said, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. So anytime anybody's going to give you money to make a movie, you got to have ironclad contracts. Everybody has to know what they're doing up front, and you should be pretty transparent when it comes to how you are dealing with the money. That's why one of the most important, it's funny when I talk about producing movies to people, one of the two of the things, and they laugh when I say this, I said, one of the most important things you can do on a movie is get good catering. And everybody laughs at me. And I'm like, nope. I said, what you want, especially on a low budget movie, is you want your crew to feel that they're taken care of by you as a producer. And the only way that a crew knows that right away is by the food that you've provided to them. Movie crews work their asses off 12 hours a day. That means you get good breakfast, good lunch, and a good dinner meal if one is needed. And you have good crafty. Crafty is what's known as craft service. So on a movie set, you have meals, and then you have craft service. And a craft service table is a table that's there all the time, so anybody during the day can get snacks. And a good craft service table has a wide variety of things. It's got fresh fruit. Good fruit is important. You've got good snacks. People have sweet tooths, and you always have good coffee or other options. It's really important that your crew feels taken care of. If they do, if they see, it's a simple thing, but if they see that they're getting well fed, it's way appreciated, and they bust their ass for you. Independent films, it costs money. I'm not going to lie. You got to get good catering, and it's expensive, but it is worth it in the long run because you're getting the work. It's hard to quantify those things, but it's important. The other thing that you want to do is you want to hire a great production accountant. You want to make sure that your money, every dollar, is well represented. It's tracked. So when you have, because ultimately you're going to want to sell your movie, you're going to want to show whoever buys it from you, your distributor. The hope is that someone's going to buy your finished movie from you. You want to be able to show them that this money was spent effectively. You want to have a paper trail. The days of using studios or using independent finance films to buy your new house, those days are over. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that everything financially is on the up and up. And that's why food and a good a good production accountant that is beholden to only you or actually only the numbers. They're not beholden to you because you can't tell a good production accountant what to do. You can't say like, hey, can you just fudge this number here? No, those are the two things you got to start with. Great catering and a great production accountant. At least that's what I would do. So I hope that answers the question. But that was a good question. I like answering the business questions when it comes to Hollywood because that is always I always love talking about those things. Important. It's funny. Movie making hasn't changed in 100 years. It's not some science that's being reinvented. The technology is better, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that the methodology is any different. Mukbang Reviews says, you thoroughly answered my question, and we, the Post-Geek Singularity community, appreciate it greatly. P.S. The Prince song of the day is Old Friend for Sale. That is a good song. By the way, it's in, I just got it from Amazon, the Prince book, his memoir or whatever it is. I know there's been some iffy talk about it, but I have in fact got it. I'm going to open that up and dive into it. Movie Fanobi says, happy Sunday, you distinguished bearded director. Well, it's been a while since no, I guess not true. I mean, I did direct 50 hours of my friend Mike Schertz's Crisis Medicine medical lecture series. So, and that was fun. So hopefully one day I'll be directing another movie because I really would like to. We shall see. And if I can somehow get my hands on Free Enterprise, I'd like to go back in and make a new 4K version of it and put it back the way I've always wanted it to be. And I think I can make the movie better. So hopefully I will one day get that opportunity. Oh, this is a good question. This letter comes from Joe Fall. Hey, Rob, this past weekend, a fellow Imagination connoisseur wrote in about his unique 3D experience with Gemini Man. His letter brought me back to last summer when I saw the 3D re-release of Terminator 2. I went into the showing as an excuse to see T2 on the big screen for the first time. Little did I know I would walk out of perhaps the greatest 3D experience of my life. It's hard to describe, but the image did not pop out from the screen, but instead went inward to make the viewer feel like they're literally sitting in the room during these iconic set pieces. Even though I've seen the movie at least 100 times, it felt like my first viewing all over again. This has me wondering why studios do not express more interest in 3D. I feel the average 3D screening barely differs from the standard one, besides an occasional Star Destroyer popping out. If a movie as old as T2 can be restored with such amazing quality, I can only imagine implementing this kind of technology on a big release, such as an Avengers film. Is it just too crazy expensive? Surely there has to be a bigger fan base for 3D than just James Cameron and I. With the right attention, I feel 3D can become much more than just a gimmick. P.S. I'm going to try and see a 3D showing of Gemini Man this weekend, double featured with either Dark Fate or Jay and Silent Bob. There are so many interesting movies to see right now. That is from Joe Fall. Well, Joe, I have told people that I'm a huge fan of 3D, especially home 3D, because uh, movies are still not here in America, but you can still get 3D movies. Alita Battle Angel 3D, the Avengers movies. I've been still getting the all of the Marvel films. They're released 3D overseas. I like getting them. Unfortunately, I only have one pair of 3D glasses now, so Elizabeth and I can't watch a lot of 3D movies, but I've really enjoyed 3D. And in terms of, like you were saying, there has been what are called there's two different kinds of 3D movies. There's movies that are actually shot in 3D, shot with a stereoscopic process. Or, which is now more common, there are 3D post conversions, which means the 3D is created in post-production using effects technology. You're not shooting it native. It's not native 3D. And post-conversion varies in quality. You really have to have people that know what they're doing. And as far as home 3D goes, Top Gun, believe it or not, has a great post 3D conversion. Jurassic Park has a great post 3D conversion. Most of the movies that you see in theaters, like if you see a 3D showing of the Avengers, for instance, Infinity War and Endgame, those were post conversions. The problem with 3D is that it was never, especially in America, the most important thing with 3D is how it's presented to the audience. Because you can have the best 3D, you can shoot it in native 3D, or you can have great post-conversion 3D. But if it's not projected correctly, and a lot of the time in the United States, they did not, because it has to be bright enough. It has to be bright enough. And that's basically what's happening is when you're watching something in 3D, the light is cut almost half in half, unless you have somebody who really knows what they're doing. The 3D for Avatar was amazing because it was in IMAX theaters and they were calibrated properly. But one of the things that killed 3D on the domestic front was that the presentations in a lot of theaters were bad. Unfortunately, theater chains to project great 3D, you really have to make sure that your projection is up to snuff. And it was not. And that's, I think, what really killed 3D. I think 3D has hung on in places like Europe and Asia because their theaters are they're kept up. They're kept up with the technology. Unfortunately, in America, I look at movie theaters kind of like our healthcare system. Whenever they can cut corners or whenever they can save a buck, they will, because they want to make more money. The idea of providing the greatest 3D experience possible is not usually on theater owners' minds. They're trying to save money. That's why you frequently go to theaters and for regular standard 2D presentations, the bulbs aren't bright enough. And with the end of we used to have union projectionists who would make sure that theaters were providing the right presentation, but union projectionists are too expensive, so a lot of theaters don't have them anymore. And now with DCPs, basically theaters are screening files, so it's all automated, and that is so there's not really a person looking at every screening and making sure that the lamps are bright enough and things like that. So I think 3D was really a casualty, especially in this country, of bad presentation. But at home, I think 3D is dope. There's been some really interesting, like I have a 3D post-conversion Blu-ray of The Last Emperor. Bernardo Bertolucci's The Last Emperor that I got from Italy. It's an Italian Blu-ray. It was only released in Italy. And it's great. Again, that was post-conversion. And when you have post-conversion, like you said, 3D is not so much about making Star Destroyers pop out of the screen as to make it a more immersive experience. Avatars, you look at old 3D, and it was always like poking something out of the screen and make you go, whoa. But I think Avatar proved what great immersive 3D can do for an experience. Seeing Avatar in 3D IMAX was amazing. And you really, truly, like you said, was more immersive. It made you feel more like you are there. And unfortunately, 3D is essentially dead in the United States. I don't know if it'll ever come back. Maybe if they can do it without glasses. Who knows what the new technology that we have yet to see will bring. But unfortunately, 3D in this country is basically dead, really. Although it's hanging on in Europe, and they've said that they're going to release Spider-Man Far From Home. That might be the last 3D disc I ever buy. Who knows? But it's kind of a bummer, really. Yeah. Sad. I like 3D. I think it could be great. Let's see. Brian Cruz is here. Terminator's box office results are sad. That's now 4 straight Terminator movies that have underperformed. This sucks. I want this franchise to succeed. Well, Brian, I think everyone likes the Terminator franchise. Who doesn't like Terminators? I think the real problem is that it's just this. It's really, sure, the details are a little different, but it's just the same movie over and over and over again. I'm one of the people that liked Terminator Salvation. I thought it was pretty interesting, an interesting way to take the franchise. The Sarah Connor Chronicles certainly developed the franchise further. But unfortunately, this idea that, a Terminator is being sent back in time to, kill the leader of the future resistance. Tallulah's barking. Poor Gilbert. Gilbert's been sick. He's not feeling well. He was sick. He got sick last night and has not been himself. And Gilbert, Tallulah has been comforting him, and so it's sad. That's why Gilbert hasn't been around much. He's sort of ailing. He's definitely got a tummy ache, and probably gonna have to take him to the vet. Who knows? But yes. So I think ultimately the Terminator franchise, it presented a premise, and that premise after Terminator 2 was done. It was finished, and just doing the same thing over and over again. I really believe that from a storytelling standpoint, it's really you need to provide. I've got a little personal, like Rob Burnett's rules, like my axiom: never put your universe before your characters and your story. I also think that you have to provide, in order to get somebody interested, the movie log line, like what the movie's about, or if it's not a log line, a paragraph. You need to hook people, especially when you're dealing with a genre movie, science fiction, fantasy, horror. It's really important that you hook them intellectually, because there's got to be something within the premise that makes people go, "Ooh, I wonder what's going to happen." You have to. I have a whole idea about what if movies, which goes along the lines of, I really believe that when you're watching a film, a lot of the time, that one of the things that really engages people is they're constantly asking themselves. Audiences are constantly asking themselves about the main characters, whether it's a movie or television show. They're thinking to themselves, "What if I was that person? Would I make the same decisions that they've made?" And I think that's a big part of storytelling of any kind, but especially with movies and television. It's pretty immediate. You're like, and in horror movies, when a character goes into a room they shouldn't go into, they shouldn't go in there, but you're like, no, don't go in there. That's what keeps you engaged in those kinds of scenarios. And I really do think that the problem with the Terminator franchise is the problem is baked in. The premise is what it is. That's just the premise of what Terminator is. The Skynet, the evil machines, send back an unkillable robot back to the past and to take out the future leader of the resistance. That's it. That's what Terminator is. It's not like you can play with the details. You can, let's go look into how did the Skynet rise to power? You can do that. But ultimately, what you really want to see in a Terminator movie is you want to see the Arnold Schwarzenegger character, or the Christiana Loken, or you want to see Robert Patrick. You want to see the future robot, the unstoppable killing machine, come back and cause mayhem, and our characters to survive that mayhem. That's all that there is. That's what the Terminator franchise is, and that's what people want to see. But they've seen it, so how many times are you going to watch that variation on a theme? There's nothing left to do, unfortunately, and it's a bummer. It bums me out. I wish that there was more to it. But I want the franchise to succeed, but I think it did succeed. Terminator 1 and Terminator 2. But, again, it becomes irresistible. And when you go back and you look at those things, like RoboCop, RoboCop 1, there's been 3 RoboCop movies, there's been a remake, there's been like an animated series. Everybody's trying to do variations on a theme. Robot cop that used to be human. Okay. But that story was so well told in Paul Verhoeven's first movie. You can always go back and do variations on a theme. The postmodern Prometheus, the Shelley Frankenstein story, all of that. The machine with the soul of a man. Okay, I get it. But there's only so many times you can see that film over and over again, and so many times you can go to the well before people are like, they want to see something new. They want to see something more interesting. And the Terminator franchise is inherently sort of one note. And I don't know if you can ever make it work. Rick Berg says, great thrash on Peters. I don't know what you're talking about, Rick. No, I mean, it really wasn't. I didn't mean that as a dig on Alec Peters. I really didn't. But, an experienced person, look, anybody who does any kind of crowdfunding project, part of the money that you're crowdfunding is to pay you or to help you survive while you're making whatever it is that you crowdfunded. I mean, that's part of it. You have to think about your time, your materials, and depending on how you want to look at it, the difference with you're speaking about Prelude to Axanar or the Axanar project is that it was based on an IP that we didn't own. So, I mean, I don't think it was unusual to spend the money in certain respects. Like, for instance, there wasn't a phone system in our studio. So, the phones were paid for by the project. And that's what would happen in production. I mean, I was issued when I went to Australia or New Zealand, I was issued a phone by production because if crew members are using their own phones or things like that, then to take calls, they're doing things that they wouldn't normally be doing unless they were working on this project. So it's right that a production pays for that kind of thing. But yes, a production accountant, no matter what project you're doing, a production accountant, if you've taken in $1.5 million is a really important thing. And so I just think I didn't mean to thrash on anybody personally. I was just saying that if you've taken in money on an independent film project, you have to manage that money because you're beholden to somebody, whether it's donors or whether it's your investors, and you want to make sure that they feel their money is well spent. I'll give you an example. I'll flat out tell you, like, when I was doing big DVD projects, and when I mean big, multi-million dollar projects like Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, that was basically a $2.5 million project where we were given a lot of money, and we had to go. That money is given to you, but you have to produce. There's a 4-disc set of Chronicles of Narnia, and we shot all of the behind the scenes on the film. But that money that they give to you, say it's $2 million total. I have to pay my people. I have to pay myself. I have to pay for lodging and food and insurance and all of that for the team that I sent to New Zealand, airfare. And I had guys in country for 14 months. Now, at any one time, I could open my books for that particular project for Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And somebody could look into those books and go, okay, here's how you spent all of this money. Because when you're working for a studio, when I was working for a major motion picture studio, like with Warner Brothers on Superman or 20th Century Fox for X-Men and X-Men X2 or New Line, I did the Shoot 'em Up. I did that documentary. You always want to be able to have your books ready at any one time because you never know when they're going to ask, where you can open those books. Now, I was never asked. You just have to deliver the projects. But if I was, you could open up my books and go, oh, here's how much money was spent on this project on this day and what you spent it on. So they know, especially if what you deliver is not, it doesn't seem like they got their money's worth. All of the DVD projects that I've ever worked on have way over delivered. But which is why I've never really been audited. But you want to make sure always that somebody can always open your books and go, okay, here's where everything is spent. Mukbang Review says, feeding people is essential. Only still shoots interest me, but I can attest that you must, number 1, have a clear plan, and 2, feed people. P.S. Paula Bowlers from the PGS live chat must write you. She is. I like Paula. Maybe I can convince her to one day become a moderator. But yes, I do think that it's important. Look, when you're working on you have to understand that taking care of your people is essential on any project. When you're paying somebody, if you're underpaying people or you're overworking them, it's problematic. What you want, especially on creative endeavors, is you want your people to give 100%. And they have to know that their input and their abilities are respected and appreciated. And when you're working on a film set where sometimes you've got hundreds of people working, or even tens, if you've got 50 people or whatever, 100 people, the way that they immediately know that they are being respected and treated correctly is if they're well fed. I mean, it's a great indicator. I'll tell you something else. When you are directing a project, as a director, your crew knows whether they're going to have a good time working on the shoot with you by lunch on the first day. By lunch. And what a crew is there to serve the project, which means the director, who's the head of the project, if the director knows, and here's the thing that will kill it, if you lose your crew, it'll be a miserable shoot. Here's what the crew wants to know from you. They want to know one thing. A film crew wants to know one thing from you as the director. They want to know that obviously you know what you're doing, but they want to know that you have a plan, that you have walked in there and you know exactly what you plan on doing, because their job is predicated on doing what it is you want them to do. So if you walk onto a set and you're like, your DP is like, so what's the first shot? And you're like, yeah, I was thinking about that. You are dead. You are dead. Because a crew is waiting to do, and they're trying to think 2 or 3 steps ahead of you so they can anticipate what you need, because time is money. So when you step on, that's why I like to walk the day. Once I've walked the day, the first AD knows what I'm thinking. They know that I know what I want. The DP knows what I'm thinking. We're all into each other's headspace, and we have a plan. We've created a plan. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't have variations on that plan throughout the day. There are always times when you're going to go, you know what? I just thought of another shot. I'd like to get that shot. Well, if you've already got a plan, a lot of first ADs will be like, God damn it, you said that we were going to do this and this and that. First ADs don't like when you improvise things when you already have a plan, but eventually they'll grudgingly let you do it as long as you're aware that this could affect the rest of the plan for the rest of the day. But look, you've got a plan. Your crew loves that because they know that you need. They know what they need to do. They're not wondering like, what are we going to do next? And they've got their day. They understand that their day is going to go well. So in addition to having a good production accountant and having good food, if you ever find yourself directing something, just know what you're doing. Know what you're doing in your own mind. Never step onto a set and go, I was thinking, maybe we should. Don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. You're dead. You are dead. And your crew, you will never, some people can recover, but at least on the first day, at least until lunch, have your ducks in a row. Walk the day with your first AD and your DP. Get on the same page with them, because and by the way, on a television set, it's different, because a television set, remember, on TV, the directors always change. So on a TV show, the first AD is the man or the woman. If the first AD is a woman, they are the people. They're the person who runs the set. They keep it all going, because really, the DP and the first AD could step in and take over if they needed to and get it done. But what you want to do is the same thing on television. You want to make sure that you've got a very clear vision and you already understand the show that you're working on and what is expected of you. You can't go into a TV show and be like, I've come here as the director to reinvent the wheel. No, you're not there to reinvent the wheel, because the show's already got its, but you can still do things within the confines of that show. You can always get really interesting camera angles. You can still get great performances from your actors. There's things you can do working within the paradigm of television. But again, it doesn't change the fact that you need to be prepared, even more so on TV, because if you want to make any kind of a mark, the more prepared you are on a TV show, and everybody's already got a second hand, they're and a third hand and a fourth hand, they've already got a way of working together. If you can come in and you know what you're going to do, you can make your mark in TV. But again, it's all about knowing what you want to do. So anyway, I hope that was illuminating. And listen to me talking like, when was the last time you were on a set, Burnett? Anyway, Raymond Verrata says, why do franchises like Alien and Terminator have been failing despite having material from the same creators? Cobra Kai and Creed reinvigorated theirs. I'll tell you something. I think that Cobra Kai and Creed are, look, I've used Creed as an example of how to manage a franchise property correctly. Creed is a great example of finding you've got a fan and also a world-class filmmaker who came in with a vision and was able to take what had come before, honor it, and still do something new. Cobra Kai is a revelation in terms of, my God, let's make a sequel to The Karate Kid. We're going to go back and get the two actors. We're going to get the two actors from the original movie from 35 years ago. Same thing. They honored what came before. They got the actors. They love the show. The creators love the show. And they're like, we want to go back and we want to make The Karate Kid. 35 years later, they're not like, we're going to reinvent. We're going to reinvent what The Karate Kid is. And I think the problem, remember, when people make things, a lot of it has to do with when they made them. And people change all the time. Alien, to me, Alien is one of the great, not only is it one of the great horror films, but clearly one of the greatest science fiction movies ever made. But the thing about Alien that I think really works about it is the idea that in Alien, the cosmos is unknowable. Where the alien came from, what its purpose was, where the space jockey was from, we would never know those answers, nor were we supposed to know those answers. Those were just, it's all very intriguing. Like, we as human beings, there's going to be places in the cosmos we shouldn't have gone or we weren't meant to go, and we're never going to have those answers. But that's what made Aliens so great, in that sort of Lovecraftian sort of way, the great old ones that are out in the ether somewhere, and humanity will never know them. And if we do know them, they'll tear our souls apart or whatever. And so that the first Alien works really great. And then Ridley Scott comes back 3.5 decades later and says, well, I've always wanted to show where that space jockey character came from, and Chariots of the Gods or whatever. Now, that's not necessarily a bad idea, and I can understand where he's coming from, because he's coming back to make an Alien movie or work in the Alien universe with Prometheus. But in terms of that movie, you don't need, that's the wrong question to ask. And I understand, but Ridley Scott's coming at it. 4 decades have passed, 3.5 decades have passed. So he's like, I'm going to go do this or whatever. And it's like, dude, perhaps that's not what you should be doing. And Ridley Scott, you go back and you look at those Dark Horse comics that were being published. There's a lot of great Alien Dark Horse comics. They did some amazing, like one of the ones that just off the top of my mind, Alien Hive. There were so many great Alien comics that were done that were written by fans. They came up with people that really thought about Alien and wanted to take it in interesting directions. But the studios aren't going to do that. I mean, it's the Alien franchise, the Terminator franchise. It's like David Ellison, when he got the rights to Terminator and he made Terminator Genesis, he didn't want to make a bad movie, but it's like, yeah, I like the Terminator franchise, but they don't know where to go with it. It's unfortunate. But yeah, so when creators come back, I don't necessarily think that's always the best thing, because they've changed as people. I think that the Creed model and the Cobra Kai model that's the way to deal with long-time venerable franchises. I really do. Stub McShave says, if I were to send back several Terminators to change history, I would send them to the same time and have them working together. Well, that's another thing. You think about it, like in the first Terminator movie, in your mind, you could say, okay, well, I understand the way that they didn't have enough time or there's some reason. But why do you have to send why do you send Terminators back in time I guess they can only go back 30 years. Why not send Terminators back in time and kill somebody's great, 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 great grandfather? You know, like when the Borg went back in time in Star Trek First Contact. And look, I like Ron Moore and Brandon Braga as people, but this idea, I understand, it was very convoluted. Why don't the Borg go back to the beginnings of life, human life, and get rid of people there so they can assimilate the planet? Maybe because I guess there's nothing worth assimilating, but it just seemed to me that the plan in First Contact was a little convoluted. But yes, send Terminators back and have them work together. It seems silly just to send one back. I mean, it hasn't ever worked. So Skynet's pretty stupid. Or now, what is it, Legion? It's a bad plan. It doesn't work. We've seen it not work over and over and over again. And you're like, how many times is Skynet going to try doing this? I know the future keeps changing and they don't know it. The Skynet doesn't know that it's just the whole thing is, yeah. Mattuine says, I share your dislike of tomatoes. I can't stand raw tomatoes, but the more you do to one, the more I like it. Salsa, sauces, etc. Ironically, the opposite is true with soybeans. Edamame, good. Tofu, blech. Dude, you and I park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. Let me tell you, son. I mean, I like salsa. You know, I like tomato sauce. I just can't stand the texture of the slimy tomatoey. I don't like that at all. I love edamame, and I hate tofu. But I love edamame. You know, salted edamame that's warm. Ooh, makes me want to go get sushi right now. But I'm with you right there. I am totally with you 100%. I don't know what that says about me, but it's true. Let's see. This one comes from our man Jeffrey Mao. Morning, Rob. I wanted to follow up to my letter about home theater setup that you read. First, I wanted to point out that the PS on that letter was not from me. I think Mayor Mike copied the PS out of somebody else's letter and pasted it into mine. But thanks for your thoughts on sports movies that you have liked. Oh, Mike goofed. Second, as soon as I wrote that, the price for the projector, I searched on Amazon again. And yes, they have cheaper projectors. And these are renewed or refurbished models from Optima and that same ViewSonic one. They're about $700 to $800, so definitely more in my price range. With regard to your comments on audio, yes, I will agree that audio is definitely one half of the viewing experience. But when it comes to resources for a home theater setup, it's probably more like 75% and above. For those rich friends of yours with the monster installations, it's probably 90% easily in terms of time and material. I have had a surround sound setup since the mid-90s when I got my first Laserdisc player. My dad somehow was able to install the Bose speakers into the walls of our living room. That Bose was interesting because it had both a front and rear subwoofer. The surround speakers fed out of the subwoofer, so I kind of had a 5.0 setup with totally passive subwoofers. The coolest thing was watching LA Confidential on disc, and in the scene where they're under the house at the end, hearing the footsteps of the cops running around you was awesome. The one thing that I did not like about surround sound was when it came to concert videos, or at least just the couple that I've seen. I noticed this problem on Metallica's DVD. I think it was probably Cunning Stunts. I noticed that on the surround mix, the vocals were coming only from the center channel and everything sounded far too direct. Like the guitars were only coming out of one side of the channel, same with the drums. It was not an immersive experience at all. I wanted to feel like I was in the pit in front of them, but that's not the feel that I got. I ended up turning it back to the 2-channel stereo mix and it sounded much better. It could have just been a bad mix or that later on the engineers figured out how to mix concert audio for surround sound better. That disc was from 1998, by the way. With regard to what I was saying about adjusting the screen width based on the film's aspect ratio, yes, you could do that with a projector, but it'd just be a zoom. You wouldn't be utilizing the full vertical resolution available to you. So let's do a little math. A 4K image is 3040 by 2160 pixels, or about 8.3 million total pixels. That's a roughly 178 to 1 aspect ratio. So a 185 film would use about 96% of the available pixels. A 235 film would use only 75.7%. Actually, Tango Shalom is 4096 by 1716. That is widescreen 4K. So really, we're talking an image that is 3840 by 1636 pixels. Essentially, a 235 film wastes almost a quarter of the screen size. Well, it does, but like for instance, the file, the raw file for Tango Shalom, like I said, I'm working on, being that it's 4096 by 1716. That's all that there is. There's nothing more. So that's it, based on the screen size, based on the aspect ratio. So when I finish that, when I deliver that, it's not like I'm missing out on the pixels that aren't there. That's just how big the file is. So to try and resolve these issues, we can go about it two ways. Interestingly enough, I literally only just thought of both ways this morning. The first would only be possible with a projector, and this will utilize the anamorphic trick. As we all know, or hope we know, anamorphic widescreen film is achieved by using a lens during both photography and projection to squeeze the widescreen image onto the film frame and then unsqueeze it. You're correct. This would probably only appeal to us cinephiles, but it would be cool nonetheless. Basically, you have to create the 4K disc with the horizontal squeeze. If played on a regular screen, the image would be squeezed. The viewer would have to switch out the regular lens on his projector for an anamorphic one. This will then project the film at the full 235, utilizing all 2,160 lines of vertical resolution. You're still not seeing a true 50-70 horizontal lines, but it gets close. A DLP is well suited for this idea, as it's a projection technology, and theoretically both its front and rear projected solutions could do it. The way you could do it for a direct view display, such as a TV or a monitor, would be to get a manufacturer to make a proprietary screen size of 5070 by 2160. You could even go wider to allow for a true cinerama experience. For a flat screen, I guess you could use retractable side curtains, not unlike what some cinemas use. However, an even cooler option that utilizes existing but bleeding edge technology is flexible screens. The sides of the screens can fold back based on the width of the frame on display. I have no idea if such an idea is being considered by manufacturers, but I see no technical reason why it couldn't be done. The wider screen TVs could also display our anamorphic squeeze discs as well. As we have all seen, when you plug a widescreen monitor onto an old PC, sometimes the image is stretched out. The wider screen TV could in the same way display the film stretched back out to its correct width. The disadvantage here is that you'd need a brand new TV, whereas the projector, you would just need a new lens. Well, that's my thoughts on the matter, and as an imagination connoisseur, we shouldn't let anything stand in the way of an optimized film viewing experience. Say no to unnecessary letterboxing. Well, you know, it's really interesting. Like I said, for Tango Shalom and for any film that's finished in 4K widescreen, that is your aspect ratio. There isn't, there's when I put up something, when I play that, you're just getting that file. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's all very weird. It's a very strange thing. For instance, I'll give you an example. So Skyfighter, the short film Skyfighter, was finished at 2098 or not 2096. Why am I drawing a blank on it? 2048 by 858. So it's widescreen. It's widescreen 2K. Widescreen 2K is 2048 by 858. So 2048 by 858. Now, I have that file size. Now, I'm delivering Skyfighter to the Dust network that's going to play it. What they want is they want the film to exist within a 16 by 9 frame. So what's going to happen is it's going to have letterboxing built into that image. So the 2048 by 858 file, which is that original file, is then going to be inset into a 16 by 9 frame. So it's literally the file is going to get reduced, which is kind of a bummer, really. But that's how it works. Now, if you were to upload it to YouTube, YouTube can then take that file and it would just play the file. It'll just widen out and play that file. It won't make it necessarily letterboxed, and that's pretty cool. So I wish they would do it that way, but that's their spec. So I have to. Anyway, off into the weeds here, but I want to thank you, Jeffrey, once again. Thank you for a very good letter. So here's another letter. Hassan Chavez sent me a funny letter. Hello, Robert. This will go straight to your spam folder. Here's why. 4K is a marketing gimmick. Stereo sound is enough. Surround sound belongs to movie theaters. The movie-going experience is not an experience. All home media releases should be in 16:9. Yes, even Lawrence of Arabia. Godzilla 98 is awesome. Hassan Chavez. Well, that's kind of funny. I, of course, disagree with all of those things. You can't, I cannot stress enough, if you have a really decent surround sound system, and again, not one of these, you buy them in a box, a surround sound system in a box with small speakers. You need speakers that have enough presence where you can feel them. If you can do that, it tremendously enhances the home experience watching movies, because so much you forget how much time and effort is spent into creating the sound fields of movies. It's truly extraordinary. And when you go and you listen to something like Apocalypse Now and you put that disc on, and just the beginning, hearing the helicopters go from around the surround sound system, or one of my favorites, the Battle of Germania in the beginning of Gladiator. If you got a kicking surround sound system and you're playing that, it's unbelievable. One of my favorite, I think it's one of my favorite effects in any movie, is when the catapults are launching those pikes. The sound of the metal catapults, the way it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. So definitely, I'm a big proponent of that, because if you're not hearing that, you're not hearing so much of what was put into making the film. So I think, it's important. I love that stuff, and it'll enhance your experience. I promise you, it will. It's really worth delving into. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to bring an end to this chat. First of all, before I do, we have to check in on the Seahawks game right now. Let's see where we're at on the Seahawks game. Ooh, 24-24. First of all, we should be clocking Tampa Bay. Their record's 2-5, and we're 6-2. And they're giving us, oh man. Well, we're in the fourth quarter. It's 8.5 minutes left to play. 24-24. I got to get watching this game. I got to see the end of this one. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, alien beings, whoever you are, thanks for watching Robservations. This brings an end to Robservations live chat number 267. Wow. I want to thank all of you Imagination Connoisseurs for supporting the channel. I want to thank everybody for signing up, and whether you go to the Burnettwork.net website, whether you send me super chats, anyway, I really appreciate all of that. Also, I very much appreciate sending me letters. Send letters to the Burnettwork.net website. And if you like these chats, please hit like, please subscribe, please share. And you guys make the Post-Geek Singularity community. You guys are the ones that make it. And it's great fun to have you here. I want to thank all of my moderators, Lewis, you, and I also want to thank Jordy Lyons, who are new. Terry, the sheriff of Nottingham, is taking a little break because he's got busyness to do. Detective Jim, he's here. And of course, the honorable Mayor Mike Bodden, who is in the political fight of his life. Ladies and gentlemen, they are voting in Riverdale, Iowa on Tuesday to see if Mike Bodden, our moderator, will continue to be the mayor of Riverdale, Iowa, or his opponent, who apparently is a housewife, is going to take it, is going to be the new mayor. So it's on pins and needles. We got our own little political fight here, our own little corner of politics right here at Robservations. How many people, how many YouTubers can boast that their moderator is actually the mayor of a small American town? Pretty crazy, pretty exciting. It's all good. Anyway, have a good rest of your weekend. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. Tomorrow, I will be back on the John Campea Show, and I'll be here tomorrow afternoon as well. Thanks very much, everybody. And as always, have a better day.